Well, you know what being an audiophile feels like. Sometimes you just get into the never-ending pit of upgradies, you know? It's, honestly, it's kind of hard to explain. So, as talked about in my previous videos, I have reviewed several headphones, but today we're not reviewing headphones really. We're talking about DIYs and upgradies. The reason is because I bought this SRD7 like 2 months ago, and ever since I got it, you know, being the ever naughty modder, I decided to take it apart and take a look inside, and you know, that opens up a can of worms. So the first thing I did was to replace the input wires on the connection board. As you can see here, we have let's take a look here. We have red as R, positive, black as negative right channel, and white as positive left channel, and green is negative left channel. So the thing I did is to replace the 4 input wires. This one is left negative, this one is left positive, this one right positive, this one right negative. It took me around 2 hours, but I finally get it done, and I was like, okay, fantastic. So what to do next? You know, being an audiophile, you're pretty familiar with fuse, right? So the thing I did next was to replace the onboard fuse with this golden one. As you can see, it's from a company called Audiophile. I place a lot of trust in this company because I've bought their wires before. The bare wires are very fantastic. The cost is extremely reasonable, so you know, I trust their product. So I bought an aftermarket fuse. They said they don't really have polarity, and I can install them any direction I want, and that wouldn't affect sound quality. So I just, you know, dropped these in and had a listen. So the thing is, it opened up treble as such a great deal that sometimes it can be very fatiguing. But I find myself going back to this fuse very often because this fuse gives vocal a stunning clarity that makes vocal extremely clear, like crystal clear and shiny. And it's just, oh man, it's just so pleasing to listen to. I mean, your ears get fatigued, you know, fairly quick because this fuse push forward mids and treble, but the quality of both mids and treble are just so darn good. In the end, I took this fuse out and put the stock fuse back in, but that's because the stock fuse aligned with my listening preference more, because I prefer more laid back sound and I like my treble, you know, more subdued. Just like I like the HD 650 more than I do the HD 600s. But wow, this opens up a whole can of worms because I never really know a fuse can have such a huge effect. So over the course of 2 months, I did some extensive modding of the SRD7 Professional, you know, adapter box by STAX. You hook it up an amplifier and you plug these into your AC, and these will sync with any electrostatics you hook it up to. And the thing I did was I made a STAX to COS electrostatic adapter with the COS extension cable, and it's just not easy because I keep getting the wrong pin out. For those of you who are making a COS to STAX extension, STAX to COS adapter cable, beware that the pin out on Daring Phone Audio is wrong, and that's usually the first results displayed in the image section. So I have to warn you that bias is actually this pin. You see? The pin on the left instead of the pin on the right. On their website they said bias is this pin. However, that is not correct because I measured the DC voltage on the 5 outlets, and only this outlet has about 75 volts DC, so I determined that this is the bias voltage plug, which is this plug, not this one. Alright, I repeat, the diagram on Daring Phone Audio is wrong. As for the electrostatics themselves, it's a ESP950. They're rumored to improve significantly with a better amp, so in the end, how do they sound? I would say these are indeed a very huge improvement over, the stock E90 amp. It's much more energetic and has much more bass. It doesn't, the stock E90 is not bad at all per se. I mean, it has a very musical sound, but when being pushed too hard, it tends to, the drivers can over excursion and make those nasty little pop sound that sucks the enjoyment out of music. But it definitely doesn't exist on the SRD7 because these have plenty of power in store. In fact, the most they can take is about 7 watts before they run into distortion. So, if you put 7 watts into an electrostatic headphone, most headphones are just, the drivers are just going to explode. Unless it's an HE6, which is not an electrostatic headphone. Alright, so I don't want to elaborate on the pin out because the pin out of STAX connectors are available on Google everywhere. And yeah, this is just a huge surprise, The ESP950, I really have a lot of nice things to say about them because these are not the fastest electrostatics, as I've had both the 007 and 404 before. However, these have an extremely pleasing sound signature. I can't really tell why they're so pleasing, but I can listen to these for days without getting any fatigue at all. And the Modi 3 I just got half a month ago. These are, these are pretty good. These little devices put out a pretty, how do you call it? These put out a decent sound. I wouldn't say they are good, but they are at least, pretty decent enough for you to shell out $99 on. I mean, these are nowhere near giant killers, and I don't think they will kill any giants at all because compared to many PS Audio's offerings, the bass still lacks foundation and heft, but as a $99 product, what can you complain? As for the Emotiva, it's still standing strong, it's 50 watts per channel speaker amp, and it's cheap. It does its job. I don't think it will ever be the best because it lacks refinement, but for $200, what can you complain? It can drive HE6 very well. Not much to complain about. As for the RNHP though, this headphone amplifier is fucking fantastic. In a future date, I'll review them, but for now, I don't think I'm gonna, review this unit just yet, but bear in mind that this is a fantastic value. Actually, it might be on par with the Gilmore Light Mark II in terms of sound quality, because I heard that a Can Jam was extremely impressed, got this, and it was even more impressed with the sound this thing puts out. It doesn't really have a lot of power, but the sound it puts out is so damn clean. It reveals every flaw of the signal chain. Oh my god, this thing is fucking fantastic. For $500, bruh, a fucking steal. Even more so than the SRD7, because the SRD7 is, a cheap way to improve the sound of your ESP950 without breaking your bank. And whether or not your ESP950 can take 580 volts, is down to your luck, because some users reported their ESP950 not being able to take such high voltage and develop a crackling sound after hooking up to a 580 volts DC bias amplifier, such as the STAX amplifier. But this pair works just fine, and it sounds a little more energetic than the stock E90 amp. I wouldn't say the E90 is incompetent, no, not at all. That amp is still pretty fantastic. but the SRD-7 Pro had it beat. And yeah, this is basically it. So the only thing you need to worry about is, I mean, once you get the P950, the only thing you need to worry about is to get an adapter cable, and you can make one yourself just like I did. And yeah, that's it for the update.